Well, I'm joined now by the SNP's Deputy Leader, Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola Sturgeon, well, first of all, can we just clear up your position on holding a referendum? It will be held within the term of the next Parliament.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, if the SNP win the election on May the 3rd, and that's entirely up to the people of Scotland, then within our 4-year term in government, we will hold a referendum to let the people of Scotland to decide the question of independence.
And that's non-negotiable?
Well, I think if the SNP win the election, we are entitled to put our programme for government into action. The people of Scotland will, by electing an SNP government, have said that they want to have that chance to take for themselves the decision on Scottish independence.
So if you emerged as the largest party and another party, for example, the Liberal Democrats, came along and said, look, we won't go into a coalition with you as long as you have that commitment because we're not nationalists, you would say no deal?
Well, it's interesting because people have different views on independence in Scotland, but what is absolutely consistent and overwhelming right across the party spectrum is support for a referendum as a democratic and right way to decide that issue. And I think all parties have an obligation now to listen to the verdict of the people of Scotland on May the 3rd and act accordingly.
Is what you're saying.
If there's an SNP government, there will be an independence referendum.
And how many questions would be in that referendum?
Well, our preference is to ask the straight question, do you think Scotland should be an independent country, yes or no? That's the question we would seek to put to the people of Scotland.
Would you be open to the idea of having another one, which, for example, gave an alternative of having a Scotland with more devolved powers?
Well, Gordon, we're 3 weeks away from an election. I think all parties have the right to put to the people of Scotland their policy. Our policy is to have a referendum with a straight question. Should Scotland be an independent country, yes or no? That's what we're asking for support for in this election.
But you wouldn't rule out another question?
Well,
I'm just trying to be helpful with your negotiations with the Liberal Democrats.
I'm sure you're always helpful. We are putting to the Scottish people our policy. Our preference is for a straight question, a simple question, a question that would allow the people of Scotland to take that decision.
I'm not suggesting you couldn't put that. I'm just suggesting you could put another one as well.
I think we should allow the Scottish people to have the right to vote in this election. And I think all parties after the election...
Right, so you're not ruling that one out?
All parties after the election will have to listen to the verdict of the Scottish people.
OK. Council tax. You're proposing...
It's very unfair.
Yes. Your local tax would be one rate, right? It would be 3p. Yes. Can I just read to you, this is oral evidence to the Burke Committee in March last year. Your former leader, John Swinney, he was asked whether he would support one local tax rate for the whole of Scotland. He pointed out the SNP had just voted against a national service charge and said, and I quote, "The fault line for us was that it removed local discretion and local decision-making." He went on to say, "I think the ability to choose at a local level what sum of money you are paying is an important part." Why was he wrong?
Well, that was our starting point, but we've taken a judgment that for two reasons, and I'll explain both these reasons, that it's right to cap the local income tax rate at 3p across the country. The first of the reasons is for ease of transition. I think we have to give time for the new system to bed down, for local authorities to get used to that. But secondly, I think after a decade of rises in council tax of 60% on average across the country, I think, on balance, the people of Scotland would prefer to have some certainty.
So John Swinney's concerns, which he gave as the reason that you voted against the SSP service charge.
There were many reasons we voted against the service charge.
Right,
we thought it was the wrong system.
I've just read out to you his reasons.
That was one reason, and you're absolutely right to read that out, but there were other reasons too. But we've reflected on that position, and these things are judgments, Gordon, and the judgment we've made is that for the next term of the Parliament, it's right to cap the local income tax at 3p.
I'm sure some viewers who are football fans will be sitting there saying, you are the Liberal Democrats in disguise. You sound like them and road tolls. It turns out to be unpopular, so they immediately changed their policy.
Well, of course, it was only 2 weeks ago that they'd said they were in favour of road tolls. We've taken great care in fashioning our manifesto, not just in the local income tax policy, but in all of our policies, to make sure we get them right. Now, any responsible government in waiting has to make judgments. We've made the judgment for the next term of the Parliament. Right. It's in the interest of local taxpayers to have that certainty.
This will set a precedent that U-turns are now called taking a judgment.
Well, I think people would expect any political party that aspired to government, and remember, this is the first time in the SNP's history that we've presented a manifesto when we're ahead in the opinion polls, on course to form the government. It's not just a manifesto, it's a programme for government, and it's important that we get it right.
Now, I asked the Liberal Democrats last night if someone living in a house worth £1 million and living off a share portfolio, giving them £250,000 a year, would pay nothing under their local tax plans, and the answer was yes. Presumably that would be your answer too.
The local income tax will be levied on earned income. We've decided not to levy it on savings because we think it's a good idea to encourage people to save. On investment income, I'm coming on to investment income, the experts, the public finance experts, say that the yield from that would be outweighed by the cost of the assessment.
So the hypothetical person I mentioned to you would pay nothing?
It is a hypothetical person because they would pay local income tax on their earned income, they would pay other tax on their investment income, and the number of people you're talking about is very tiny, Gordon.
Well,
we've taken advice from the experts.
Is this fair?
Well,
I mean, I'm sure the non-working rich are very grateful to you and will probably vote either SNP or Liberal Democrat. But do you really need to go out your way to woo them so much?
No, this is about fairness across the board, and regardless of people's views on local income tax, I think everybody accepts it's a fair tax. Abolishing the council tax, which is a deeply unfair tax, and replacing it with a tax based on ability to pay is fair. We're also cutting the burden of tax, and 9 out of 10 people will pay less than they do under council tax.
When the Treasury tells you can't have your £400 million of council tax rebate.
Gordon.
Well, Labour have already said it won't happen.
Labour are saying a lot of things in this election. They're all negative and they're all about scaremongering. Very few of them have any basis. In fact, there is absolutely no indication from the Treasury that is the case. Indeed, the Burt report...
Well, have you asked them?
The Burt report established... The Burt report...
No, but have you asked them?
Well, we've had discussions with civil servants, but there's
you've asked the Treasury?
There is no indication from the Treasury. But can I make an important point here? This money does not belong to the Treasury. The council tax benefit money is Scottish taxpayers' money at the moment.
No, it's not. It's UK taxpayers' money.
It comes from
Benefits are not a devolved issue.
It comes from Scottish taxpayers.
No, it's not. It's UK taxpayers' money.
But you and I pay taxes. That contributes towards the council tax benefit.
Yes, but the UK government is responsible for benefit. There's no council tax, then there's clearly no council tax to make a rebate on, is there?
At the moment, the choice is that money is invested in council tax. If the people of Scotland democratically choose to change the system of local taxation, I think it's perfectly reasonable that their
What's
taxpayers'
plan B?
money...
How much would the council tax... If they do, against all your expectations, say no, what would your local tax be?
You heard the answer in the clip. We're not going into our negotiations with the Westminster Government on the basis that they'll fail.
But you're asking people to vote for this. You want to tell them what plan B is.
Well, I don't think that is a scenario that will arise. There is absolutely nothing to indicate...
It's a perfectly plausible scenario.
The Burt report,
if not a probable
one. The Burt report had this discussion with the DWP. It said that there was nothing to suggest that the council tax benefit money would not be available if there was a change in local taxation. I think people in Scotland would be appalled at the suggestion that I'm not making, but would be appalled at the suggestion that the Treasury would seek to punish the people of Scotland for choosing a new system of local taxation.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Nicola Sturgeon. Thank you very much indeed.